So this is a tutorial on drawing Lewis structures. So we're going to look at how to draw Lewis structures, and so before we start really getting involved in it, let's look at a few rules. There are a couple of steps that you need to follow, and so step number one when drawing a Lewis structure is to find out all of the valence electrons. So you want to add up all the valence electrons, and you get this from the periodic table. You look at the group number there, and you can find it. So for instance, hydrogen is group 1, so that has 1 electron, 1 valence electron. Now, the second step that we're going to do when we are figuring out how to draw a Lewis structure is you want to find the central atom, and you're going to find this and then connect all of the other atoms around it. So it's easy to do this when you look at something, say there's only one and then there's multiple other ones. The one that there's only one of, that's the one you want to use. And just as a note, hydrogen always needs to go on the outside of your Lewis structure. Outside always. The next thing is once you connect everything with a line bond, you want to just fill in the remaining electrons that you have. So fill those in. And again, the goal here is you're looking for getting everything to a complete octet. Now there are some situations where things can have an expanded octet, but that's a little bit outside the scope of this tutorial. So once you do that, now you need to essentially, for the fourth step, if you have something that doesn't work out, doesn't seem right, you got some missing octets or whatever it may be, you need to change it and make multiple bonds. So we might need to have multiple bonds here to kind of figure this out. So let's now sort of look at an example, and this is the example that I gave in class that I had you guys go home and do. So we're going to look at the nitrate anion, so NO3 minus, and we're going to figure out how to draw the Lewis structure for this guy. So let's go by way of following the steps. So step number one, we're going to find the valence electrons for the nitrate anion. And so we have NO, and then we have 3 of these oxygens. So nitrogen, group 5, so we have 5 valence electrons. Oxygen's group 6, so we have 6 valence electrons there, and then of course we have 3 of those. And so we need to add these guys up. So this gives us 23 if we do our math here, right? And what we note though is that we have a negative charge on our nitrate anion, so we need to add an extra electron. So we're going to add 1. So this gives us a total valence electron count of 24. All right? So now we're on to step number 2, and that is figuring out how to connect all of these guys. We need to find the central atom and put them all together. Well, we have only 1 nitrogen, and we have 3 oxygens. So it's pretty easy to see that nitrogen, of course, would be your central atom. So we're going to connect these guys like so, and we're going to connect them with line bonds. Now, remember that each bond contains 2 electrons, right? So right now we have used a total of 6 electrons, so we have 18 left over. Alright, so now we're going to go to step 3, and that is to fill in the rest of our electrons by putting dots in there. And we're going to make sure that everything gets an octet. So if we just start filling all of these guys in by just adding the dots into our structure, we're going to notice here that as we fill these in, so oxygen, 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 dot, 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 that's 2, 4, 6, 8, that's 10, okay, we got some more dots here, 14, 16, and 18. So we've added all of our electrons in, and we notice that nitrogen does not have an octet, right? It only has 6 electrons. And if you look at how to calculate formal charge, you'll also notice that all of these oxygens should have a negative charge. We only have 1 negative charge, right? So nitrogen doesn't have a full octet, it only has 6 electrons, and our oxygens here, they all need to be fixed. So we're going to move to step 4, and this is where we need to add multiple bonds. So we're going to redraw the structure, and this time I'm going to add a double bond to oxygen here at the top, and then keep the other 2 oxygens singly bonded and fill in my electrons. Now notice when I fill these in that again nitrogen doesn't have, and there should be 2 more pairs of electrons on the top oxygen as well. Notice that nitrogen doesn't have any lone pairs, and typically nitrogen, right, you have 3 bonds in a lone pair, but that lone pair is being used in another bond. So we don't have a lone pair, but it does have 8, right? So, and oxygen, of course, we have 2 bonds and 2 lone pairs, typically. So this gives us a formal charge, and make sure you watch the video on how to calculate formal charge, of nitrogen of +1 and a formal charge of oxygen of -1. And we have 1 plus and 1 minus, and so these 2 over here are going to cancel each other out, and then we're left with only an extra negative charge, and that gives us our minus charge for our compound. And so now there you go, you can see that we have the correct structure, everything adds up, and we're all set. Hope this was helpful.